morning, everyone, and welcome to another exciting episode of the Pyreswap Show. We have a great show today because we're actually going to be able to go over CPI data at the end of the show. In roughly 1 hour, I guess whoever does CPI, Consumer Price Index, I think it's like the Bureau of Labor Statistics. I don't know who it is, but yeah, they do the CPI and they release it in about 59 minutes and 59 seconds. And we will be covering that. We'll be covering that at the end of today's show. Today's show, we will also be doing a live demonstration of active staking. Based on our preliminary checks, all of the networks are moving pretty fast. So we think that the yield is also going to be very, very high. This happens to be the time of the day where the yield is the highest. The early bird gets the worm, as they say. And I think that is also going to be a great demonstration of the potential lucrativity of active staking. So first of all, I just want to say good morning to GV, good morning to Tendai, good morning to Electronic, good morning to Cynical, good morning to Pyre Producer, good morning to C, good morning to Simric possibly, good morning to Alessio, good morning to, let me say good morning to all of these, to all of you great people in the audience today. Good morning Zonic, good morning Trigger Happy, good morning Electronic, and good morning to everybody watching us on Twitter and Twitch and Kick and all of the other streaming platforms we may or may not be on that that we're still working out how I'm going to be able to view your commentary. We'll have to probably set up a second monitor, maybe mount it on the ceiling. I don't know yet. Yeah, it is what it is. Anyways, so the first things I want to talk about actually is AVAX Talk, which we did yesterday. Now, did you guys, good morning Sonic, did you guys actually, for those of you who did or for those of you who didn't, did you guys actually see that talk? Did you guys actually attend? For those, I see a few of you might have been in attendance. And the first things first, I want to say I think we did really well. And one of the reasons we did really well is I think we got to talk a lot about the project and kind of explain more and more about it. The first thing I want to talk about, yeah. Oh, it was recorded. Fantastic. That was a clerical error the first time around. So I'm going to draw, and I believe we're good on camera. I'm going to draw that the concept of like a marketing funnel. And really what I'll do is I'll write the words first. So, if you were with us yesterday, you might remember us talking about marketing being another stochastic process, another stochastic approach. And we have data from this just yesterday about this being true. For instance, this was not the first week that we were in fact the sponsor of AVAX Talk. However, there were people in attendance who had been in attendance the week before as well. And these people were already at the awareness stage. They were already here. I'll change my marker. They were already in the awareness stage, so to speak. But when they're in the awareness stage, it's like they float around. Does that make sense? They're like a particle in like a system. Maybe they're like a water molecule inside a boiling pot. Does that make sense? They're just there. Oh, it wasn't recorded? Goodness gracious. Okay. Goodness gracious. Okay, let's regardless whether or not it was recorded, there was people that were already aware, but they hadn't effectively been excited enough by what was going on in the awareness stage for them to convert immediately into consideration. Does that make sense? Like they were aware of it, and they, in fact, the individual I'm speaking about, he was even in the consideration stage, but like he still just wasn't sure because it was either too good to be true to him, or maybe the level of difficulty or complexity was beyond what he was normally used to. But it was from us continuing to build awareness that we're taking people from the first time they've heard about it lower into the funnel. Does that make sense? Like, it's not just about getting awareness once. It's about getting awareness tons and tons of times. Like, getting awareness from all types of small vectors, this is what effectively brings people through the phases of the marketing funnel. So literally, it's a stochastic process at every threshold. It's a stochastic process at every threshold. And the thing is, one type of contact, meaning one incident with heat and or pressure for a boiling pot of water is not going to bring it to boil. A non-boiling pot of water. It's not going to be just one incident. There has to be a reaction of things happening in the background over time that cause things to excite to a different state, to a different phase. This is the theory behind what I'm talking about here. So again, it's the repetition of building awareness that ends up driving users lower in the funnel. As all of you guys know, once they get into this part of the funnel, nobody's ever losing them. Does that make sense? At least for Pyreswap. It is very, very difficult to get to the point of this and then not become, and then go elsewhere. There isn't really competitors for Pyreswap. There's a lot of projects that have a lot of competitors. Pyreswap is not one of those projects. Pyreswap has very few competitors. So once people get into this part of the funnel, the work is basically done, right? And the fact of the matter is, in order to continue building awareness, this just requires a more stochastic approach to raising awareness, to effectively just making awareness obnoxious. Raising awareness, this is the obnoxious part of the funnel. Does that make sense? It's about being obnoxious. I want you guys to know that any of you that in fact attend on Twitter or attend the AVAX talk show on Twitter, the people that are in the Twitter space with you, those are people that you can in fact engage with. Yeah, like they're not there that you can just kind of like silently be there listening to a central figure. Like you can in fact interact with them and like figure out why they're not getting the free money from PyreAVAX. Yeah, you can ask them. Yeah. You might convert quite a bit by having this one-on-one approach. In order for me to do it, I also have to do it one-on-one. It isn't easier for me. It's easier if I do it to 10 people one-on-one and then those 10 people do it on one-on-one. And that's what effectively causes the decentralization of the attention. There was another idea that was floated to me yesterday during the show, and it was effectively about taking the meme coin projects on the Avalanche C chain and in fact involving them somehow in Pyreswap, perhaps giving them a liquidity pool inside the Genesis or in some sort of farm contract. And I have to think deeply about this idea, although it does possibly serve to decentralize the marketing around Pyreswap. Meaning, if we take a small amount of our emission total, and let's say that we really just, it's a small amount that we could take from, other pools. Effectively, we could take less than 5% of our emission total, and then perhaps give it to certain meme coin projects, and basically have this meme coin paired against PyreAVAX. We could in fact emit PyreAVAX to this liquidity pair. This liquidity pair would be useful. It could kind of give these meme coins like long-term use case just as a liquidity conduit around Pyreswap. So I don't necessarily estimate that there will be a lot of necessarily like liquidity, but the fact of the matter is, what do meme coins do a lot of? Do you guys know what meme coins do a lot of? Who here can tell me what meme coins do a lot of that arguably we as Pyreswap need to do more of? Well, there's that, Alessio. Yeah, Zero Kex is right. Shilling. Yes. Alessio's answer was rug pull. So yes, I wasn't going to say that. I wasn't going to imply that. But yes, shilling. The shillingness of meme coins is through the roof. In fact, people feel bullishness on meme coins based on the amount of people shilling it. Like I literally say, I do see a lot of people shilling this, so that makes me bullish. That is how people on Twitter think. Does that make sense? So the shillingness on Twitter in general makes people fucking bullish. We're only going to increase that as well. So if we have this emission, if we create this pool and it has this emission, and effectively we kind of separate these pools and make it like a separate type of like meme farm or something like that, we can effectively allow any meme coin launch that has, I don't know, I guess it's hard to describe, but we can effectively allow meme coins that effectively want to, I guess this would be like a partnership of some type. They could effectively deploy their liquidity on Pyreswap. They could be paired against AVAX or PyreAVAX or both. We probably pair them. We probably incentivize the PyreAVAX pair, and then they would have a liquidity pool that is actually getting incentivized with PyreAVAX. So even if people aren't bullish on the meme, they at least get, PyreAVAX, again, which is the highest real yield token on the Avalanche C chain, as a reward for providing liquidity for it. Does that make sense? I think most meme tokens, they don't have any liquidity providers. Does that make sense? They just like, they have like a one person, they fucking deploy liquidity, then they fucking burn it for whatever reason. Like they just send it to the fucking burner, and everyone's like, okay, that seems correct. That's like what a regular meme token should be. It's really interesting how like the new meta, the new narrative just evolves so quickly. But yeah, this is something that we could do. I have not really officialized it yet, and I need to talk a lot internally with the developers and other people inside the troop, because implementing it might not take that long, but it's also quite the deviation from. It's a wild idea, but to quote Jesus again, the doctor is not dispatched to healthy people, he's dispatched to sick people. I don't really know if the average meme coin trader is necessarily suitable to become a Pyreswap advocate, but I do think that people that are trading meme coins on Avalanche probably are a little bit smarter than people who trade meme coins on, let's say, just dumber chains. So, I hope you guys get what I'm saying here. I wasn't going to name any chains, Javery, but thank you. Yeah, anyways, the point being there is, imagine this. If you guys can imagine the scenario. Imagine there's a meme coin launched on Avalanche, and they do just so much shilling. They're just shilling. If they now had a liquidity pool that was being incentivized by another token, they would just start shilling that as well. Does that make sense? So literally, we could basically be doing emissions where they do shilling for the complete term of the emissions. Does that make sense? Like literally the meme coin project itself, while they're shilling, they're just doing shilling. They effectively have the ability to do this. Javery, again, see that right there is kind of the way that I think about capturing a user that becomes an advocate of Pyreswap. Because really what I'm looking for are the people that want to move on from meme tokens. Does that make sense? Like they're like, okay, that was fun for the first 7 times, and then it was not fun the next 7 times, and I don't want to do it a 15th time. Does that make sense? Like that's who I think is actually a better capture. Does that make sense? I think that people on Twitter, they see the stuff that just gets a lot of eyeballs, and it ends up being just like a constant conversation about meme tokens, right? And that ends up being, again, Twitter is the awareness part of the funnel. I mean, YouTube as well, but Twitter is the awareness part of the funnel. I have been looking at a lot of YouTube channels over the last week, and there's a lot of YouTube channels covering meme coins as well. Because, like, again, nobody understands crypto. Again, top to bottom, nobody understands it. And therefore, the fact that you could go someplace where it is understood is kind of just, I don't know. It's doubted. I don't know how else to describe this, but this right here, yeah, this right here. But the fact of the matter is that these meme coin holders, the fact that they could in fact deploy the liquidity against pyrewifhat, meaning they would have to buy pyrewifhat or acquire it somehow to get the liquidity, and then they would have first of all, this increases the drive to buy pyrewifhat, and then it also gives people pyrewifhat in the long term. These farms would also be hosted on the Pyreswap Finance website, so in theory, we're just getting more eyeballs on the website as well, and I hope that makes sense. Well, Zero Kex again. Yeah, you do. The doctor is dispatched to the sick and not to the healthy. So, like, I think that you can get, yeah. Well, honestly, Zero Kex, there is this threshold of de-individuation. Does that make sense? So, if you're looking at the staked wallets and you're seeing that like 12 people are playing in an epoch, and you're looking at the chat and 9 people are also talking like they just played in the epoch, you don't have de-individuation, because you can literally just like, you could probably invest the time to like figure out who everybody's wallet is if the group is small. Does that make sense? So the fact of the matter is that when humans are looking for safety of the herd, they're looking for a larger group. Does that make sense? They're looking for a group so large that they can't see everybody at once. Does that make sense? Do you mean open? Like, I mean, it's already open, Alessio. Yeah. I mean, in theory, any meme coin project could deploy liquidity on Pyreswap. Like, that's like any. We have yeah. There's nothing halting that. There's nothing halting that. Yeah. I would say we don't need to increase emissions to make this happen. Does that make sense? It would just be that we take a small. It would be a small fraction of the emissions. Yeah. Right. But Alessio, if they don't understand the incentives, yeah. Like, again, to me, it always boils down to spreading the idea correctly, and that also just boils down to us having more and more stuff happening on Twitter. Now, stuff happening on Twitter, again, internally in the circus, like internally in the circus, we're talking a lot about YouTube stuff, but externally, I'll talk about like Twitter stuff, right? So on Twitter. By the way, guys, did you know that Pyreswap was in the top 10 of the Binance Smart Chain TVL gainers in the last week? Did you guys know this? Hey, we were in the top 10. They didn't get our logo right, but we were in the top 10. Twitter, like again, it's like our own accounts. We could literally have KOL shills. Does that make sense? And then additionally, you could also have meme coin projects. Does that make sense? And the thing is, meme coin projects are effectively in the business of just posting memes. Does that make sense? No, Javery. No. That is another token that has no utility and then needs to be managed. And then I have to do more marketing for another token. Yeah, so it literally is the opposite sense. It is the opposite sense. Yeah, I would definitely launch the other forks before launching a meme coin, because now it's like, do you understand why like the marketing game is so cutthroat? Because think of it this way, like I'm gonna draw 2 pie charts. Does that make sense? I'm gonna draw 2 pie charts, and then we're gonna look at like Pyreswap. And then we're going to do, let's say this down here, we'll just do meme coins. So in the meme coin pie chart, and this is the Pyreswap pie chart, right? And I guess I'll do different colors now, because why the hell not? It's a pie chart. So Pyreswap, we're like this. And probably more like this. Well, actually, I'll just make it black and blue. Let's do these two halves like this. And here, the rest of this is blue. Can you guys tell the difference between the blue and the black? Yeah, all right, looks good, okay. Right, can you guys tell what the black is and what the blue is? Okay, the black is awareness raising, does that make sense? And the blue is like design. Does that make sense? Do you guys understand the difference here? So like literally, if you guys, and I know you guys in Discord just understand this, you guys are at least aware of like the level of design in Pyreswap, right? Would you guys at least understand this? Let me scroll back in chat here. Yeah, so the level of design in Pyreswap, unprecedented, right? Like literally, like you can see that there. Like you've now been immersed in it. You're not going to become convinced that there's not a level of design, but the awareness is just not there because we either need to be more active on Twitter, we need more stochastic places on Twitter that are talking about us, and this just needs to be happening over time. Meme coins, on the other hand, all they are is awareness, and then it's very little design. Does that make sense? Like literally, they look at like the newest meme. Does that make sense? They literally have a prefab token contract. There are now dApps based around automating a meme coin launch. Yeah, do you guys know this? On Avalanche, in fact. Like literally, it's just like you go in and you click through a fucking a field, and you can just select certain options, and then your meme coin is launched. And they do the whole liquidity renouncement and all that stuff for you. And then you're like, okay, there you go. There you go. Yeah, exactly that. Exactly that. Wow. Yeah, zero. I don't even, like that. If that makes if zero. If you understand what it's saying though, yeah. If you understand what it's saying though, yeah, because they're like that would be crazy as fuck. If you understand what they're saying though, it's like again, people aren't even leaving Twitter. Do you get what I'm saying? They're not even leaving Twitter. And the fact of the matter is that you can't truly understand Pyreswap without leaving Twitter. Does that make sense? You guys all get that, right? Like forget about trying to learn all of this on Twitter. I know that we're streaming on Twitter right now. Does that make sense? But like if you're looking for a place where you can get this in like bumper sticker statements, it's like forget about it, because that's not how Satoshi Nakamoto did it either. Do you guys get what I'm saying? Like, do you guys think that Bitcoin could have been launched with just tweets back in 2010 or whatever? Yeah, electronic, that's a no. That's a no for me. Like, first of all, what? And then you guys are going to start shilling on Twitter now? Because you could be shilling on Twitter already. Like, yeah. The fact of the matter is that if the meme coins on Avalanche, if they start raising awareness and thank you, pyrewifhat, thank you. If they're willing to just spend all the time raising all that awareness, and then effectively they start raising awareness for Pyreswap because we start giving them emissions, does that make sense? It creates another way to make money, at least temporarily, with their fucking meme token. Does that make sense? Yeah, like they can hold a meme token and even deploy it in liquidity, and then literally on a different DEX, and effectively have a different way of income. That different way of income would be collecting pyrewifhat. Yeah, literally, yeah, exactly that, Tendai, yeah. But yeah, this is effectively the two different approaches, right? And it's because of this that people think that we're in meme coin season. People think we're in meme coin season because all meme coins do is they dominate in marketing. They literally spin up their website almost as if AI fucking threw it together. Does that make sense? Like they literally have an LLM throw together a website. They have a copy and paste fork from a GitHub repository that's been forked 11,000 times. And then they literally just like, okay, let's go. And they run a volume bot. I explained how the volume bot works the other day. And that's effectively the entire strategy. Now, arguably, you guys are aware, we can't reduce the size of the design in Pyreswap, but we do have to increase awareness. We have to have our, thank you for that amazing sticker. Yeah, we do have a meme coin, you guys. Yeah, we do have memes. We just have 5 with shirt. 5 with shirt, yeah. Anyways, we have too much fun here for an educational show. Anyways, it's time for the IWV demo, you guys. Okay, let's go. Let's go. Thank you. Thank you for, to everyone watching. This is the meme that has now been generated from this conversation. I'm just glad we can have a tactical conversation with our user base, as if you guys are really along with it. You guys are along on the journey with us, by the way. Anyways, I hope these 2 pie charts really help illuminate the arena we're in, for lack of a better way to describe it. Okay. Okay, I'm going to move the whiteboard off screen. And here we go. So as far as before we start, let me make sure I actually have the let me make sure I have the thing, and let me make sure that my MetaMask wallet is not lagging to the point of dysfunction. It might be, but what I'll do is I'll just stake earlier. Okay, close enough for me, and it looks like I'm logged in. So what I'm going to do, I'm actually not going to talk about evangelism until we're done. I'm actually going to consider now the moment of the IWV demo starting. So in this video, we're going to demonstrate how active staking works with the incantation Witchvault on the Phantom Opera. Talking about this dashboard is a subject for a longer video, but effectively speaking, we're looking at these indications right now to determine how much money we can make from this instrument. So these 3 numbers right here represent annual percentage rate, daily percentage rate, and percentage rate per epoch. If you can tell, an epoch is about a quarter of a day. It's about 6 hours long. This epoch percentage rate is based on the amount of Pyre Phantom that is queued to be distributed to Pyre Phantom stakers. Now you can see that there might be as many as 47 people that are staked right now that have this amount of staked Pyre Phantom. Staked. Now this right here might be too early to stake. I think that you should probably stake when we're around in the ultimate minute. If you're in our Discord, you'll actually receive a warning for when the ultimate minute is. Now over here, you see the 24-hour high and low, and this gives you an idea of the amount, like the spike that you could see in Pyre Phantom getting staked. So now we're right here. You can see the countdown: 1 minute, 5 seconds, 4 seconds, 3 seconds, 2 seconds. I'm going to go ahead and stake my bag now. Small, tiny bag, but I think it's very, very important for educational purposes. Thankfully, the network is, in fact, moving kind of fast today. Maybe if we have a large surge in activity, we might be lucky enough to lag the network. We've done that before. My staking transaction was submitted around the 39-second mark. Let's see what happens. Well, Zonic, that's only if it processes. Yep. There you go. In theory, maybe process at the 19-second mark. And also, I don't even see any indication that I'm staked in yet. There we go. Literally, I jumped in at 15 seconds. Let's find out. Now here you can see this number 264.6. Now if more people are staking on top of that, which they are, you can see that my amount here is getting smoldered. You can see I'm down to 263.54. So I was probably, I probably received maybe like 7 or 8 smolderings right there. But the final EPR, which Zonic wasn't aware of, the final EPR is in fact, seems like a little under 2%, a little under 2% yield that I just made on $1. Now, if that's not impressive to you, I need you to understand that I'm the smallest player in this game. In fact, I'm playing with 263, and if you just saw the above indication, as many as 600,000 Pyre Phantom was played with. So there is 3,000 as much money as this being played with. So does that make sense? So if I'm playing with $1, yeah, there you go. If you happen to be in our Discord or follow our Twitter, you can see the screenshots of the amount of yield people capture from this game. And Zonic, if you weren't aware, what I did before this demo video is that I claimed all the emissions from the house wallet in order to jack up the amount of pending and cans in the meet address. Yeah, so yeah, I definitely hedged. I definitely hedged against that. So effectively right there, you can see that we still have 103 staked, and this right here might be the indication of the last amount. But this right here, with 103,000 staked, and I don't know who else is still in there still, but with 103,000 staked, you can see that the yield per epoch is still over 1%. In fact, it's a little under 5% daily. This yield is available at all prices of Pyre Phantom, Pyre AVAX, or Pyre BNB. These tokens are always the highest real yield tokens in EVM DeFi, consistently. Every 6 hours, this is true. There's not another token around that is a rival to us. We are blowing them all out of the water, and that is due to the paradigm of active staking in the first place. I'm going to, for those of you still watching this video, rehearse what just happened. I do a cursory analysis of the metrics on the dashboard. The metrics on the dashboard are there to help you understand what you can expect to gain, but arguably, the best way to really learn how that works is by practicing it. If you are, in fact, participating in our Genesis, this is what we give you Genesis missions for. You should learn this with house money. Then effectively, you want to wait to the ultimate minute to stake. You're going to then stake, and then effectively at the transpiration of the epoch, which either you or another player needs to click this button to make happen, in cants, which is positive yield, is distributed to everybody, pro rata of what they have staked. Meaning whatever you have staked, that's going to be the proportional size of your positive yield. So any negative yield you incur from smoldering, if you learn how to play the game correctly, it will be offset with positive yield. You can, in fact, if you want to make the game even more accelerating, you can power swap with one of these buttons into another token just to add a little bit of a color to the price charts. And that is a demonstration of the incantation witch vault. Again, if you have questions or concerns about how this is done, please review the orange diagram. The orange diagram is, again, a step-by-step on how this is performed. It is, don't overthink it. I promise you, this was designed for the Web3 user base. Any game that you guys have learned in the past, whether that's poker or slot machines or even meme coins, if you can wrap your head around that, you can wrap your head around this. There is, at maximum, 7 things you need to do, and that involves approval transactions if it's 7. It's calling it 7 is looking at it in the most elaborate way. Yes, but with the orange diagram, you will be able to assess effectively how much yield you can stand to capture. And that's all. I hope you guys enjoyed watching this IWV demo. Thank you. And now I'm going to pretend that video is over, and we can still hang out because we're going to talk about the CPI report that is getting published in 26 minutes. Let's look at some of the yield and chat we got here. Okay, let's look at some of these yield we got here. Yeah, okay, BNB was doing wonderful. Yeah, BNB was doing wonderful. Yeah, I mean, a lot of people did really well today, and they should have. Wow, Avalanche did really well today. You know, Avalanche was doing, what is that? That is almost 2.5% yield on Avalanche. So if you guys, you know, for those of you, yeah. Well, for those of you who were in attendance of the AVAX talk show yesterday, you should do the AVAX talk giveaway. Like, I don't know how else to describe it. Yeah, you should definitely do the AVAX talk giveaway. Yeah, like the house money you get to learn this game, you can effectively, as soon as you learn the game, which shouldn't take you more than maybe 3 tries, you can begin compounding that money and just growing it and growing it and growing it. That's what everyone else is doing that have taken the time to learn this project. They are just continuing to grow their bag. We don't really lose bullishness here. Why would you? at any price, it is the highest real yield token on that chain. Anyways, we can now look. So here's a dashboard on screen share. It's the Market Watch economy and politics calendar, and you can see that today we're going to look at consumer price index for July. Now these CPI numbers, and Jayree's talking about the purchasing power index year over year right here. So they had a forecast of 2.7 and it was 2.2, right? And yep, there's an optimism index. You know that's always in. I like that they have an optimism index. It just shows you how neurochemistry is tied to markets. You only start seeing more and more of these indications that markets are effectively neurochemical constructs. Yep. So anyways, we can look at that a little bit as well today. Does anybody have any questions about active staking, the IWV, or any aspect of Pyreswap? Wholesale inflation mostly tame, but still some hotspots. I guess we didn't talk about macro yesterday. They're now rising. Okay, wholesale prices are now rising at a rate similar to low pre-pandemic levels. I like that they're saying this, but this is a very I want you guys to think about that sentence for a second, right? So they talk about like wholesale prices have calmed down since a big spike. So meaning there was a spike, and then they calmed down. And I'm assuming from them calming down, they mean like a tapering on prices. They're now rising at a rate. They're actually, they show that they're rising at a rate similar to low pre-pandemic levels. And what that means is, I'm actually going to get back on the whiteboard. Wholesale spiked. And you guys understand what that means, right? Like it spiked, like it went up drastically fast. But now it's saying it's rising at a rate. Similar to pre-COVID. Does that make sense? They're still saying that like, oh hey, wholesale inflation is still going up. If that makes sense. It's from wholesale markets that I think you could say that the signs of inflation first show up, because wholesale is quite often the type of industries that are going to be, I guess you could say, commodified, and if these are the commodity industries, they're also going to be close to lending and banks, if that makes sense, because we're talking about finance here. The cost of partly finished goods and raw materials show no evidence. These prices tend to climb when inflation is about to get worse, okay? Unless inflation shows a surprising and likely surge. This month, the Fed is all certain to cut U.S. interest rates at its mid-September meeting. All but certain. I don't know if I would cut. Yeah, I don't know if I would cut. Yeah, thank you, Jayreee. Yes, I'm also bullish on whiteboards. Don't know what to say about that. Let's see. Let's look at the Bureau of Labor Statistics. PPI for final demand rises 0.1%. Goods increase 0.6%. Services decline 0.2%. Oh, yeah. I could see that as well. I'm not really a fan, Jayreee, of the Fed having a dual mandate. Do you guys know what the dual mandate of the Fed is? This would actually be a great topic for like Theory Thursdays. But do you guys know what I mean? Yeah, like a dual. Do you know they took the dual mandate was implemented after Bretton Woods was suspended? So I'm going to explain what that means because I just like talking about that. And again, we're just waiting for because I would keep it probably at the rate it's at right now, and just like there's other ways that you can effectively repair the economy. And I think quite often because they end up just kind of the Fed can do three different things. And it can adjust interest rates, it can adjust reserve rates, and it can do open market operations. So you have interest rates, you have reserve rates, and there's something called open market operations. And the open market operations is literally it just kind of like buying and selling bonds and stuff like that. Yeah, and the thing is, well, Javery, the IR and the reserve rate is effectively what's causing the money printing. Does that make sense? So when they talk about the federal funds rate, which effectively I think this is kind of like a combination of the two. You have the federal funds rate. We have this at like 5.5 right now. And what 5.5 means is that all of the banks that are adjacent to the Federal Reserve, they're required to keep a certain amount of their money with the Federal Reserve. Does that make sense? And the Federal Reserve, it doesn't necessarily give them interest on their deposits. Rather, it charges them penalties for not meeting the requirements. And what other banks can do inside this kind of circle, this circle of 12, I think these are actually the regional feds, and then from the regional you get into like commercial banks. The anatomy of the Fed is actually a diagram that I think isn't present enough on the internet, and maybe later I'll be able to draw one of those because it's without a diagram in front of me, it gets a little mind-boggling as well. But when they have a federal funds rate or a reserve rate or an interest rate, what they're saying is that the Fed can charge a certain amount of money to these banks for not meeting their deposit quota with the Federal Reserve. Does that make sense? So instead of a bank paying you interest for depositing your money there, the Fed charges penalties to these banks for not having enough money in. Does that make sense? So the fact of the matter is, when we talk about the Fed printing money, when the Fed lowers its rates, what it's doing is it's allowing all the other banks to print money. Does that make sense? The actual printing is actually done at the Mint, an organization called the Mint. If you guys are familiar with the Mint, they're the ones that actually print money with the actual, sheets, and they cut them with the dies and stuff. But the way the Fed prints money is by lowering this number. And by lowering this number, they make it easier. This is making it easier for banks to lend because they don't have to pay. Yeah, exactly, Zonic. Exactly. It's literally that. It's that concept. It allows more banks because it basically frees money up for banks to effectively fractionally lend. So the difference between 5% and like 2% is like literally like banks now can do twice as much lending. Does that make sense? So to be clear, this money right here was like a zero during COVID, which was kind of the craziest thing ever. Like banks were able to effectively create infinite money during COVID. And this is why we have inflation. Does that make sense? Yes, exactly, Tendai, because they have to come up with that money to give back to the Fed if they don't have it. Does that make sense? It's harder for them to effectively lend out as much money. Therefore, they need to get more interest from who they do have as borrowers. That's exactly how that works. Yep. So it's kind of like multiple different cakes that are getting sliced, and from each slice, it can determine how a different cake is sliced. And I know that's confusing, but that is effectively how it works. But again, literally, like the difference between a federal fund rate, or should I say, let's say a reserve rate or interest rate of like 5% and 2.5% is, indeed, on 2.5% is that a bank can now pretend that it has double the money if this number gets cut in half. Does that make sense? So however much money you think that like JP Morgan Chase has, or Citibank or Bank of America, however much money you think they have, if this number gets cut in half, they can now do twice as much lending. And since they can do twice as much lending, the other banks can too. So they now have to compete with reducing their interest rate because they're trying to get your business to make you a borrower there, right? they need you to be a borrower so they can pay interest on all the people that are depositing their money with them as well. And this is called net interest income. Correct, C. Yeah, that is also correct. And that's also about like what is the total amount of liquidity in that vault. That's what allows you to pull from it. And that is banking, by the way. It is banking. It's basically doing the math, the comparison of ratios that allows you to determine whether or not money can be created from time value or from risk management or from collateral or what have you. So this is the way that works. Now, I want you guys to understand something. I'm going to give you guys a few key dates in modern finance. A few key days in modern finance, okay? So we have 1913. Who here knows about what happened in 1913? I'm going to put some dates out and see if people can guess. The Fed, yeah. The Fed is established. Now, I want you guys to know something. There's a country called Canada, and it didn't get it did not get its central bank until maybe 20 years later. It didn't get a central bank until the 1930s or so. This is only if you're like a true banking nerd like me does this matter. But I want you guys to understand that the Fed being established was not effectively like central banking throughout the world. There was also other things that got established, and the most important thing to think here is that the Fed at this time still had gold reserves. Are you guys aware? Are you guys aware? The Fed had gold reserves. And the fact of the matter is, something else happened in 1946. Do you guys know about 1946? Who here can tell me what happened in 1946? There's two things that happened in 1946. Nope, not yet. Not yet. Nope. Nope. No. Zonic. We actually established Bretton Woods. So first of all, Bretton Woods is established. Bretton Woods established. And additionally, the IMF, the International Monetary Fund, is established. And they are both established at a conference called the Bretton Woods Conference. It was in 1946, and it was in the wake of World War II. So World War II ended, and the Bretton Woods Conference was hosted, I think, in Bretton Woods, New Hampshire. And basically, they invited like all the best leading economists from around the world. They also invited the Soviet Union, but already from 1946, the Soviet Union chose to not attend the Bretton Woods because they felt that it was too. They knew that it was kind of like the U.S. establishing its own hegemony, its own economic hegemony, or hegemony, however you want to describe it. Yeah. So anyways, Bretton Woods is established. And why did they establish Bretton Woods? Because the U.S. made out like a bandit in World War II. Do you guys get what I'm saying? The U.S. is like, look at how much gold we have. Does that make sense? Clearly, we should become the world reserve currency. So in 1946, the dollar became the world reserve currency. And this was because it was backed with so much gold. Do you guys get what I'm saying? Where did the U.S. get that gold? Javery, yeah, well, they got it from the Nazis, let's be honest. They did have a lot of gold themselves, to be clear, but let's just say that a lot of countries had no gold. Does that make sense? Because Europe was wrecked. Do you guys know REKT? Europe was wrecked in 1946. Do you guys get what I'm saying? So in comparison, the United States never got invaded, right? I mean, Pearl Harbor got attacked. That was the entirety of like domestic damage for World War II in the United States. That's not entirely true, but as far as the average layman knows. So Bretton Woods is established, and the International Monetary Fund, known as the IMF, is established. The IMF is now part of the Troika, which is effectively what kind of establishes monetary policy in the European Union. Does that make sense? So while the European Union was not established until like way later in the 90s or whatever, the IMF already existed for decades prior. Does that make sense? The IMF was effectively like a international NGO. Where were we at in time? NGO that was like, hey, we're gonna do lending to help European countries get back on their feet. Does that make sense? So the IMF was like a relief fund to European countries in the wake of World War II. Does that make sense to everybody? Specifically the ones west of the Iron Curtain. You guys follow me? Now, Bretton Woods is established, and the United States dollar is the world reserve currency, and arguably maybe still is. But effectively, something happened in here in 1971. Who here knows what happened in 1971? Yes, so Bretton Woods is now suspended. The Bretton Woods system is suspended. I'm going to write that in quotes. Does that make sense? Suspended, because they say suspended, but you guys understand it never was unsuspended. Do you guys understand me? Something else happened in the 70s, and I can't ever remember the exact date of this, but I want to say it was around this. It was like 1974, maybe. Can you look up, Jamie? I'm kidding. Let's see. Let me look this up. When was the Fed dual mandate implemented? Yeah, there you go. The Federal Reserve Reform Act of 1977. Thank you. That's exactly what I'm looking for. 1977 was effectively when the dual mandate. Yeah, it was not explicitly stated as a single mandate until 2012. By the way, that's also another powerful date. Does that make sense? Like, so you could say that 2012, like the dual mandate was now. We are in like the craziest financial times because like the way that people keep fixing these banking problems. Shitty bankers is correct. To everybody who's not in Discord, Discord says shitty bankers. Yes. So literally, 1977, you have the Federal Reserve Reform Act. And this is basically what implies that the Federal Reserve is now going to be cognizant of other metrics like the unemployment rate. Does that make sense? Because effectively, the cat is now out of the bag that we don't have gold collateral anymore. Does that make sense? So now everyone's like, well, if there's no gold collateral, like what the fuck are you doing to make decisions? So basically, the bankers are all standing there with their hands in their pockets. Do you guys get what I'm saying? They're standing there with their hands in their pockets, and in 6 years, they're like, okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to do macroeconomic analysis to really dial in how many dollars they're supposed to have. And because the guys running the bank or whatever, they weren't able to go and find the dollars. Does that make sense? Because the U.S. post 1946 was creating its global domination. Does that make sense? Like literally, the U.S. was just spending its own money to expand its influence. Do you guys understand what I'm saying? So like, surprise, there's not enough gold, right? It's like, I don't know why this is that surprising. Does that make sense? Because the Bretton Woods system was established to kind of like rein the Fed in. Does that make sense? Like, oh, they have to prove this is. But then at the same time, arguably the auditing was perhaps, the auditing perhaps needed help. And of course, we were also in a Cold War, right? The U.S. was in a Cold War with Russia. So they weren't really being transparent about auditing because this was kind of when this is the era where intelligence agencies were born. Does that make sense? The NSA was actually around the 1920s or so. So this was the real like J. Edgar Hoover era. Do you guys get what I'm saying? So the government got extremely secret. In fact, a lot of governments got secret. So naturally, things that were also not getting reported was our amount of gold collateral because that was a national security risk. And it's fucking mind-blowing. But yeah, welcome to the world you live in, by the way. This is not a dream. This is not hell. You are awake. And this is the short life that you have been given through the grace of God. Yep. Anyways, okay, we got 6 more minutes till the CPI drops. Good morning, Perception. Good morning, everyone. I feel good today. Let's see. Good morning, Fexer. Good morning, Alessio. Good morning, whoever else I didn't say good morning to. Yeah. Yep. So we have the Federal Reserve Reform Act, and then in 2012, you now have like the dual mandate is the thing. Dual mandate is explicit. Made explicit. Does that make sense? So in the Federal Reserve Reform Act, which by the way, we can go and pull that up. The Federal Reserve Reform Act was basically saying that due to the fact that we don't have the Bretton Woods system, we need another system to implement. Does that make sense? So we have the Federal Reserve Reform Act, which basically creates this type of organizational bylaws through which the Fed is going to determine monetary policy. And basically what they said is like, okay, we're just going to now be dashboard based instead of collateral based. I'm not saying that there's no value to dashboards, but like macroeconomic data is just so susceptible to flaws and inaccuracies. It's kind of crazy that we kind of like rely on this as like the guiding stars in the sky, because arguably you could probably argue that a newspaper astrology section has better understanding of what's going to happen than I would say macro econ data, at least especially in the 1970s. Anyways, okay. Let's see. So effectively, if you want to guys know some key dates in the modern era of banking, from 1913 to 2012, we're talking about a 100-year period. The previous 100 years, I'm a more of a fan of. But 1913, the Fed's established. Bretton Woods established in 1946. The International Monetary Fund also established, which kind of like the IMF is kind of like created as like a nephew of the fucking Fed in this context. But now the IMF is part of the Troika. Do you guys know what the Troika is? The Troika is it's the European Central Bank. In fact, it's the IMF. In fact, yeah. What is the Troika? Because I don't remember the third one right now. There you go. The European Commission. Okay, yeah. I wasn't gonna recall that. Yeah. Organ with possible joint and formal control over national policies. I don't want to address what Europe's going on with, but yeah. European Commission, the European Central Bank, and the IMF. So it's the Troika, right? It's a Russian word for three, which is funny because Russia is not in the EU. But they say that almost like it's a... Okay. And arguably, we're going to be beholden to this website anyway. But yeah, we're going to be dropping these numbers in the exact same minute as everybody else. So yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed this lesson in banking history. These are I would say the majority of the dates that you should probably know. These 5 dates. If you can know these 5 dates, you can now get a picture of what's happening, like what the last 100 years of banking effectively was created. The dual mandate made explicit. Do you guys know what the dual mandate is? Who here knows what the dual mandate is? Okay, I'm gonna change the color here. The dual mandate says that the Fed has 2 jobs and not 1. Correct, J-Reed. Yeah, correct. So effectively, not is it just monetary policy? Yeah. Monetary policy, but also unemployment. So the dual mandate is now, what is the dual mandate? Like, what are the 2 jobs? Monetary policy and also unemployment. Now, I personally think that this is a fucking joke, because the theory around employment and unemployment is the theoretics and the macro around it is not nearly as, I guess you could say, fundamental as things like transactions. Yeah, like whether or not somebody is employed or unemployed is extremely the metrics around this stuff get convoluted all the time. For instance, it used to be the case that if somebody was working like less than 30 hours a week or whatever, they were considered unemployed. And then something called the Affordable Care Act came in, which effectively created the scenario where a bunch of jobs were now only getting employed for 29 hours a week. Well, those people were now going to be considered unemployed, but what they did was they just changed the definition to make it a lower hourly threshold, and now people that are working lower hours are not considered unemployed. So it's still just these numbers, which people are just looking at as if they're some sort of gospel truth. They're always just getting convoluted and changed in the background. For those of you who remember what 2022 was like, I know I have 1 minute, okay? 2022 was 2 quarters of negative real GDP growth. Q1 and Q2 of 2022, 2 quarters of negative real GDP growth. And that has normally been the hallmark of a recession. That has been the hallmark of a recession. However, in 2022, this was now considered debatable. And then if you look at other metrics, we can't call it a recession. You guys, we've been in a recession since 2022 based on how we called it previously. This is, again, in economics, people are just making it up as they go along. And it's kind of mind-blowing how flexible they make the way they look at this thing. Anyways, we now have the CPI. The CPI has now been dropped. Let's take a lookie at this. Yeah, I think the dual mandate is a joke, and a bank should be considered about monetary policy. The fact that a bank believes that its job is to decrease unemployment is kind of fucking crazy. Like that is crazy as fuck to me. The fact that you think that having this saturated employment curve is the best thing to do is also crazy. Because there's an economist named John Maynard Keynes, and he wrote this book called The Theory of Employment. And I'll let you guys know, I think that book, like what I read from that book is almost gibberish. And that's gibberish to 5. Does that make sense? So I don't know if you guys think I know what I'm talking about, but he talks about things like the marginal disutility of labor. Literally that, yeah. The idea of employment, what it does is it allows government to kind of do whatever the fuck it wants to the economy. And it isn't necessarily even accurate data because they're always just changing what unemployment means anyway. Okay, let's now look at this. Okay, let's just go to good old Google. CPI July. Let's go. There you go. Kobasi later. There you go. You can see how Twitter is the best, is the quickest on this. Let's see. Do they have it yet? Bureau of Labor Statistics. Consumer Price Index summary, and let's see the PDF version. So this is 8:30 a.m. Eastern Time, which is New York City time, on August 14th, which is today. They have a phone number you can call. Anyways, so for 2024, this increased 0.2% on a seasonally adjusted basis. A seasonally adjusted basis means they're adjusting it. The basis they're adjusting is every quarter, effectively. After declining 0.1% in June. Now, what's interesting is that they're also kind of mentioning what happened in June. The U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics reported today, over the last 12 months, the all items index increased 2.9% before seasonal adjustment. The index for shelter rose 0.4, accounting for nearly 90% of the monthly increase in the all items index. The energy index was unchanged over the month after declining in the 2 preceding months. The index for food increased 0.2, the food away from home. The index for all items, okay, let's look at the chart. Okay, well, I mean, June they saw a decrease, July is an increase, small increase. Let's see, utility, they specifically talk about piped gas for service having a significant decrease. Wow. Okay. Yeah, anyways, as far as like what this means, arguably these small changes, I think generally, unless you're in like a highly leveraged position, could arguably be ignorable to you. You can see here that June, they had a bunch of like sharp decreases here for things like energy commodities. Like energy commodities was having a sharp decrease. By the way, these are the changes in consumer price index. So we mean a positive value means that the cost is going up, and a negative value means the cost is going down. Do you guys get what I'm saying? In theory, here we saw fuel oil decrease by 2.4, but now it's increased by 0.9. They say all items, we have a 0.2. Okay. Arguably, this could just be like regular fluctuations. I don't really think that any of this is like panic worthy. None of these numbers are as large as they were in the past. We have a decrease in used car and trucks. So by the way, guys, if you're looking for a used car or truck right now is the time to hit them. Yeah, like personally, I'm just bullish on used car and trucks right now. It's a buyer's market. Just get out there and start getting them. All that free space in your garage, you got to fill it up with something, right? Like I would say just wait until the next, I'm joking, you guys. But if you guys want, yeah, used cars and trucks, like buy the dip, you guys. Yeah, Javery, yep. Well, you know what you can say is you're buying them. You can tell your kids you're buying them cars early, and then you can just flip them later on when the CPI index spikes the price of used cars and trucks, right? Just keep it covered, keep it in your garage. Start it every 2 weeks, run it for 15 minutes, you know, and then next month, right? When the I'm joking. Anyways, do you guys have any questions about the CPI? Yeah, used car with hat. Yeah, used car with problems. Well, Alessio, yeah. You know what you can always do is you can get a code scanner. You guys know what I mean? Learning how to use a code scanner feels like something that pays dividends. Anyways, yeah, there's your index, there's your summary. I believe you saw U.S. core CPI 2.9 year over year, 3.2 year over year. It was estimated at 3.2. Okay. Yeah, I'm looking at the. Yeah, Alessio, like arguably it means nothing. Yeah, I don't know. Like I don't see anything here that's worth reacting over unless you want to buy a used car or truck right now. Yeah, arguably none of this data is gonna affect you unless you're like in a highly leveraged position concerning this, and that might just be a bunch of exposure. They don't look at things like. This is consumer price index, right? So this is effectively what people are buying, right? So like the average consumer, what are they buying? They categorize all of this, right? So when they talk about food at home and food away from home, they talk about energy commodities, meaning gasoline, all types, fuel, oil. Then they talk about electricity and then of course piped gas. And then they talk about all items less food and energy, which is this. They talk about new vehicles, used car and trucks, apparel, medical care commodities. Then they talk about shelter, transportation services, and medical care services. I guess a 0.4 here isn't great if you're using Uber. So considering that transportation services is going up and used cars is going down, I guess it's time to stop Ubering around and buy a used truck, you guys. You guys see what I'm saying? Yeah. Yeah, anyways. This is, again, like this just means that this is CPI is used to measure inflation because you can look at the way prices are changing across industries. And yeah, the prices changing or spiking or going up too fast. Gav, you know what? I have heard that narrative, and I think that's absolute gibberish. Because the fact of the matter is, Gav, public spending, like what Yellen is doing with bonds, yeah, like I don't think that's necessarily anything. Like literally, you're talking about like Yellen, Secretary of the Treasury, right? Treasury Secretary. So what they do is during April or whatever, right? They collect a bunch of tax money, and then what the Treasury the Secretary does is then either going to buy or sell bonds or issue bonds effectively. Does that make sense? Now, the buying and selling of the bonds does affect liquidity in Javery. They're not going to drastically cut rates. They're gonna cut a quarter of a point. Yeah, 100%. Yeah, and arguably, like, they're just not gonna do it. They're gonna cut it a quarter of a point, or maybe they'll cut it half a point and then like stop for a second, right? Oh, I don't think that they're going to continue cutting rates because they're gonna cut rates. They're gonna look at CPI. They're gonna wait. I don't think that they're going to get into this extremely like let's start cutting rates type of yeah. I don't really see that happening. I mean, there's going to be an election coming up, right? So you can always assume they might cut rates up to the election to see if like they can get the market bullish to affect the election. They do this stuff, right? The Treasury Secretary, she can change the amounts of like liquidity and bonds that she herself is holding in the Treasury, which then all of the major banks they holding bonds, that also affects the amount of liquidity they have. But those banks, or if we talk about public spending, or if we talk about like public spending, right? Like we talk about like bonds affecting like bank liquidity. The fact of the matter is, when banks are buying bonds, they're buying the lowest possible risk thing ever. Does that make sense? Like a treasury bond is the lowest possible risk instrument for anyone to buy. I mean, it used to be that way, right? But that is the general attitude around bonds. Does that make sense? It is the lowest possible risk instrument. So whether or not bonds are getting redeemed, it doesn't mean that we're going to have a surge of capital into crypto, because crypto is like the highest risk thing a bank could do. Does that make sense? So the banks that even hold bonds are not necessarily like crypto exposed banks. Well, thank you, Javery. But the fact of the matter is, though, it's still at risk at what the gas coin. Javery says not pyre gas, meaning low risk. It still is governed by what's happening on that chain, one way or another, right? We effectively have the pyre gas is always the highest real yield token on that chain, but at the same time, the price action of the gas token it's pegged to can always affect its behavior. So when we talk about bonds, or whether or not they're getting issued, or whether or not they're getting redeemed, or whether they're getting any type of activity with bonds, you're talking about the most boring area of finance. And then we think that, hey, if there's something happening in the most boring area of finance, in theory, that could cause a chain of dominoes that brings us to the fucking world of degen that's going to cause Bitcoin to go to the fucking moon. And like, it's just, that's not it. Additionally, the Treasury Secretary, she can also approve money for public spending, right? But public spending doesn't really go to the tech sector unless you're talking about subsidies. And right now, there isn't really crypto subsidized. Maybe you'll see like electric vehicles go down in price if they do something like this. Does that make sense? But electric vehicles going down in price, I don't even know how that would affect crypto. Does that make sense? Like maybe they'll create a subsidy and they'll do public spending. The majority of public spending is going to go to defensive stocks. Defensive stocks is stuff like grocery stores and healthcare and like real estate stuff. It's like the boring, perpetual parts of the economy. Does that make sense? Like Old Faithful. So stuff that Yellen is doing as the Treasury Secretary, like I don't really see that it would have like a connection to crypto, because I don't see that anybody who is in fact holding bonds is thinking like, fuck, when is Yellen gonna give me my money so I can go fucking shot put it at goddamn fucking Ethereum? Does that make sense? Like they're not, the money that they already have in this extremely low risk position is it's like, hey, we're gonna just take it and we're gonna immediately throw it into the highest risk fucking thing we can find. Does that make sense? And additionally, like there's freeing up the total amount of liquidity when you're in a recession isn't immediately gonna go to like institutional banks investing in Web3. And the fact of the matter is that like, what are they gonna do there other than like throw an ETF together, right? Does that make sense? Like they already have a BlackRock ETF. Anybody who wants to like puppet that is gonna watch how BlackRock's ETF does. Yeah, I don't actually believe that public spending is actually anything adjacent to how crypto works. There are some countries like Germany, I guess, that was actually holding Bitcoin. Like they actually had like things like that. But yeah, no, I generally, the narrative, and I see, by the way, this is an example of why I see that like the people who are thought leaders on Twitter, I consider them fucking idiots. Because I have seen this narrative on Twitter from people with 7-figure followings, and I really try to dissect it, and I'm like, I have no idea why you think that a change in the amount of bonds in circulation or being issued or waiting to be redeemed or the interest rate of bonds is effectively going to directly just swell money into crypto. because this implies that institutional money is what causes crypto to go up and down. Yeah, like there was already an ETF, but really it's a bunch of consumer level people getting bullish about the halvening that causes Bitcoin to go up. Yeah, like I don't know why people think that, you know, Bitcoin has this type of, yeah, like you can look up like who like the biggest Bitcoin whales are, and it's just not necessarily like the biggest banks in the world. Yeah, you can look this up. So like whether or not Bitcoin is going up or down or not, it doesn't make sense for banks that already, they can literally double the amount of money they have in lending just from getting Jerome Powell to reduce rates. You know what I mean? Like, so the amount of money they could make, in Bitcoin is still less than the amount of money they can make if Jerome Powell brought rates to 3%. Does that make sense? Like, they could literally take Bitcoin all the way to 250 grand and it's not going to be shit because they're like, well, actually, we're interested in a 30-year mortgage on real estate that we're providing mortgages for today. So I don't really understand the narrative that like, hey, the Treasury Secretary is going to do something with bonds and it's going to free up liquidity, or public spending is going to cause crypto to moon. I have no idea why public spending would cause crypto to moon, because like from the fucking the government is not a profit-seeking investor. Does that make sense? Like the government invests to stimulate the economy, but like even if there's like a larger amount of narrative concerning, I think Trump and RFK said they were going to like back the dollar with Bitcoin. I don't believe that's going to happen at all. And that doesn't actually help the fucking world of finance. Does that make sense? Like that's not going to happen because why can't they do that with Bretton Woods? Like why couldn't they just reinstitute Bretton Woods? Yeah, that's pretty fucking crazy that they think they can make it happen with Bitcoin. You know what I mean? That's pretty crazy. The amount of the Bitcoin's volatility will also cause the way that they were. If they suspended Bretton Woods because they were fucking bad at it, they're not going to be better at managing a Bretton Woods alternative that's backed with Bitcoin. Do you guys understand that? Like, what's going to happen is if this even happened, they would institute this Bitcoin collateral system, and then later on you would find out that they fucking suspended it because you can see on chain what happens. Does that make sense? And then on top of that, since politicians are always willing to just kind of like jerry-rig the economy, they're not going to do stuff that can be verified on chain. Does that make sense? They're still going to err to secrecy. Because, you know, a lot of Cold War policies lasted past the Cold War. But yeah, I don't understand the narrative that, hey, Janet Yellen, she's the Secretary of Treasury, she's what you need to look at. I mean, but like the liquidity that's tied up in bonds, that's the safest money that banks use. Does that make sense? Like, it's not like, okay, you know, we were holding Bitcoin, but then we just dumped it all, and now we're going to take that money and put it in something like it's 5% a year, right? Or like less than 5% a year, or has an inverted yield curve or whatever. It's, wouldn't a finance supply help, Jerry? Yeah, it would help you and me. It doesn't help the U.S. government, and that's why it's not going to happen. You're talking about Bitcoin being used as collateral, and then therefore creating a finite supply of the dollar? Yeah. Jerry, don't expect things to get implemented that are in the taxpayer's interest. Things are going to get implemented that are in the tax collector's interest. Does that make sense? Yeah, there's a whole bunch of things that could be. You know what else would help, Jerry? Re-implementing Bretton Woods. Is that going to happen? They literally 12 years ago, they explicitly stated a dual mandate. Jerry, if you look at the dates again. Remember? 1913. 1946, 1971, 1977, 2012. Like, do you think that 2024 is going to take us? Yeah. Like, look at this trend. Yeah. Like this is this the if you look at those dates in the American financial history. Yeah, Jerry. But again, you know what? If there's any solace you can take here, is that there's been war. There's all the biggest wars in history where I've already been in this time slot. Yeah. There's a quote, by the way. This is a quote. Taxes are not raised, so war can continue, war is raised, so taxes can continue. Do you guys know this quote? Taxes are not raised so war can continue. War is raised so taxes can continue. This might be a little confusing, but you have to understand that there is just so much profiteering. In fact, let me look at that quote because I can't remember the guys. Yeah. And Brave is just... Yeah, there you go. It's Thomas Paine. Yeah, Thomas Paine. Taxes aren't raised to carry on wars, but that wars are raised to carry on taxes. Do you guys understand what I'm saying? Because the people that end up paying the cost for the war are just so very insulated from the people who reap the benefits of war. There you go, Jay Reed. Anyways, I want to thank you guys for coming to the Pyreswap Show. I think today was great, by the way. We're going to have a demo video for active staking maybe tomorrow, and we will be blasting it out on all channels. And I want to thank you guys for showing up. Have a great, which camera? Yeah, rest of your day. Thank you, everybody.